Bryan, how did you get into model railroading, and what scale do you model?
So I model in O scale, 1 to 48. So as people were saying in chat, I model in scale that you can see. The issue is
Yeah.
that O scale takes up a bit of room. So I don't really have a layout at home. It's more of snap track that, hey, I want to run some trains. I have to lay the snap track out, takes up most of the living room just for a tight circle, and mostly get to really exercise the trains when am able to go to shows and have it there. In terms of getting into model railroading, I got a model railroad kit when I was 5 years old and was hooked ever since.
You're obviously a model railroader, but your presentation was on what is model railroading. So I posted kind of a, what do you call it, a community post about this. And one person responded that the difference between model railroading and toys is cost. Another person mentioned marketing, but I know you came up with kind of a list of different criteria
Right.
of what. So I thought the first thing we should probably do is look at what the criteria is that separates model railroading from toys, and maybe some people will have some opinions about the criteria.
So this is a excerpt from the presentation next month at the National Model Railroading. So question comes up, what is model railroading? Well, should be rather easy. This is the National Model Railroad Convention. We should have the National Model Railroad Association should have a definition, right? No,
Theoretically.
theoretically, but I have not been able to find anywhere where the MMRA has actually defined what model railroading is. They define these what their goal is in supporting the hobby. They don't actually define what it is. So then we go to the dictionary. Well, the dictionary isn't any help because they have the definition of a model and they have a definition of a railroad. So then, if we go to everyone's favorite source of inaccurate information, Wikipedia, we get kind of close of model railroading as a hobby in which rail transportation systems are modeled at reduced scale. Well, all right, but again, how does that differ from a toy? So then we ask the question, what do we consider model railroading? And then for me, it boils down to kind of five different criteria of detail, layout, and there's subsections in the layout that we go over in the full presentation. Operations, whether it's simply a loop of track that the train runs around, or you're doing full sig operations on it. Does it have a cohesive theme? And the most important one, in my opinion, is it believable as a railroad? Does it work together as a whole? Well, and that's part of what we go into in the full presentation is I'm not coming out and saying here is a definitive thing. One of the things we talk about is a scale and where on the scale things are. So, for example, a loop around a Christmas tree. I mean, yes, there are definitely people who spend months putting up loops of trains around the Christmas tree, but for the most part, it's going to be, hey, we went to the toy store, we went to the hobby store, we bought a loop of track, and in this case, the Polar Express, and we put it around the tree. Versus going to a full layout like this. And no, this is obviously what pretty much all of us would consider a model. It's highly detailed. Okay, it's a yard, so you don't have too much detail besides the buildings. There isn't that much greenery in this scene, but all of the rolling stock is nicely detailed. This particular layout, I was invited to come to for an operating session. So this models the Cajon Pass from San Bernardino up to Bakersfield. And so we were running trains. This is the San Bernardino yard from here up the pass, and the grade is in fact steep enough that you need to run helpers on the train. That if you don't have helpers, you this quote unquote standard engine consist that was that would have been pulling that train can't actually make it up to the top end of the layout. So these are kind of the two bookends of what we talk about in the presentation. There's a bunch more examples in the middle, and that's where we start getting into the gray area, and that's where the discussion starts getting interesting of what are we defining as a model railroad. We can have the space orcs invading from Mars. Is it still a model railroad? I mean, it's certainly a fantasy, a more fantasy. I don't think that you would be able to find space orcs in real life, but it's certainly there. It's not. It certainly falls under model railroading. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a prototypical railroad, but okay, is this a model railroad? It's completely fantasy, but doesn't meet all the definitions for a model railroad.
It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity.